regime may be part of the solution as the priority shifts to defeating Islamic State. This as moderate Syrian rebels claim that U.S. money and supplies have all but dried up over the past several months, even as the president touted American support for the opposition in his State of the Union address. So has the administration quietly changed its Syria policy, and what does it mean for the fight against ISIS and our allies in the Middle East? Let's ask Wall Street Journal columnist and deputy editor Dan Henninger and foreign affairs columnist Bret Stephens. So no official announcement about this, but lots of leaks behind the scenes and newspaper stories. Is he changing the policy, and why would he do it?
Well, I would argue that this administration always had a bias in favor of Assad. You have to remember that when it came to
despite all those public comments?
Right. When it came to power in 2009, the administration was very keen to treat Assad as a reformer, as a potential partner. They were very late in calling for him to go when the uprising began. We never took the steps against Assad that we said we would when it came to his use of chemical weapons. We never armed the moderate Syrian rebels in any sufficient way.
All right.
And now here we are, and we have essentially a de facto pro-Assad policy.
Okay, why?
Why?
What's the thinking? What's the administration's logic for doing this? Is it to defeat, saying, look, I mean, I guess the unofficial argument would be we need them to defeat Islamic State. Right. Without them, we can't do that.
Well, there are 2 points. A, the one you just mentioned, but B, it's part of the administration's broader effort at a rapprochement with Iran. Remember that Assad is Iran's man in Damascus.
Right.
He forms part of that condominium. You have an administration that's desperate to cut a deal with the Iranians, which is part of the reason they are soft-pedaling their opposition and effectively pursuing, if not a pro-Assad policy, a policy that allows Assad to stay. We have told the Syrians that we will not go after Syrian military positions.
Let's assume Brett's right about the.
I think he is right.
Okay, and I think that's right too. That is really going to create problems for Turkey, for example, and the Saudis in particular. Not to mention the Israelis, and we need the Turks and the Saudis as an alliance to defeat Islamic State. So isn't there a contradiction here?
Well, so there certainly is a contradiction, and it does do all those things. But I think Brett has put his finger on it. The Iran nuclear deal is the tail wagging the entire Middle East dog for the United States. That determines everything. Barack Obama needs Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei to be on board for this deal. And so he is willing to allow these other events to occur. The question is, will the Middle East degrade to the point where it will simply be impossible to get this deal with Iran? Look, we just had the Yemen government felled, our supposed ally in the Middle East. We hear this at the end of this week. Right. The Obama administration is now reaching out to the Houthis who have replaced the Yemeni government.
Well, but what about the argument that, look, we're not going to defeat Islamic State otherwise, and they are, as I think you guys would agree, probably the more immediate threat to Western security and the insecurity in the Middle East, no?
Well, look, what the administration is trying to do is pursue a containment strategy with Islamic State. We are not.
You don't think they're trying to defeat them?
No. Well, if we were trying to defeat them, we would be having more air sorties than, for instance, we had than we're having now.
Wait a minute. We just drove them out with the Kurds on the ground with the help of U.S.
Right,
from Kobani.
In a small enclave in Kobani, but nonetheless from Fallujah all the way to the outskirts of Aleppo, the Islamic State is deeply entrenched. In fact, it's more entrenched now in Syria than it ever has been before. What this administration is pursuing is a kind of containment strategy with the Islamic State in the hope that at least the problem doesn't get worse. At the same time, pursuing effectively a pro-Shiite strategy, thinking that's part of the sort of broader realignment of American interests. You heard President Obama say just not too long ago that Iran can be a very successful regional player if it comes to a deal, basically saying you make a deal with us and we are going to license your regional power plays throughout the Middle East.
But doesn't that leave then the Middle East with essentially Islamic State still in a place of prominence, still a possible threat to the West? Meanwhile, Iran, I mean, you'll have two competing forces, and I guess we could play balance of power, but it's also a recipe for some instability.
Yeah, I think over the long term, it most certainly is. I mean, we claim to have defeated Islamic State in Kobani, but that was an effort that took months of fighting by the Syrian and Iraqi Kurds, plus air sorties by the United States. If it has taken months to root out these foreign fighters there, that suggests that the real battle is going to take a greater effort on the part of the U.S. and is going to be a longer battle. As Islamic State, can wait us out if they need to.
And so you just briefly, Brett, you agree with Dan that basically this is about the Iranian nuclear deal above all?
That's all it is. And by the way, the Houthis are the Yemenite version of Hezbollah. Let's not think that they're some kind of Shiite tribe. They are an Islamist sect.
The militia in